The war between Israel and Iran is a conflict that's been building for decades and is now spiraling out of control.
So far, Israel has launched dozens of strikes against Iranian nuclear and military sites, but they've not yet been able to hit the Fordow nuclear facility, which sits hundreds of feet underground.
President Donald Trump says he'll make a decision in the next few weeks on whether or not he'll order the U.S. military to strike Iran.
The Iranian foreign minister has left his country at war to be here in Geneva today. His presence alone offered some hope that there may yet be a way out from this rapidly escalating conflict.
If there's a chance for diplomacy, the president's always going to grab it, but he's not afraid to use strength as well.
FBI is raising alarm about possible sleeper cell attacks inside the United States, all the while Russia and China are threatening World War III if the United States strikes Iran. Things are escalating very fast, so let's get right into it. Starting with the sleeper cells inside United States. FBI in America is raising alarm about possible Hezbollah-linked terror cells organizing terror events inside the United States. Now, this is something we've been talking about for a few days now on our live streams, but Iran and Iranian proxies have sleeper cells inside United States, inside Israel, and there's a big risk of them becoming active in case the US gets involved. Here's more details.
So, Jonathan, what do you think Iran is doing right now? Are they calling up their proxies that have been severely degraded over the past year and a half and saying, help us strike back?
Well, so here's where the real issue, I think, of the future for all of us comes into play, is that we constantly call, and I've heard several guests call Iran the terrorists of the region. But the reality is terrorism is a tactic that they use. Their ideology is fundamental Islam, and this has been a case for thousands of years. And Iran has never evolved or progressed to where they work things out diplomatically. You could never trust them. And so with this fundamentalism, this is the fear that I have, is that even inside the United States, the exact attack that Israel just carried out inside the borders of Iran, with the way that our border was down for 4 years, there could be cells here that could be activated by Iran or proxies and groups that are loyal to Iran.
As if that wasn't scary enough, we have Vladimir Putin of Russia and even a CCP member from China, CCP spokesperson, saying publicly that we are heading towards World War III. Definitely not something you want to hear from two nuclear powers. Let's talk about Russia first, and then we will move on to China. You see, Russia and Iran have been very close allies for the last few years. In fact, both countries are the most sanctioned countries in the world, so they have found common ground to work together. Iran has been providing Russia with drones and missiles for its senseless invasion against Ukraine, all the while Russia has been helping Iran with air defenses, jets, and even submarine technology. And hundreds of Russian nuclear experts are actually in Iran right now, helping Iranians with their nuclear program. Now, during this current war between Israel and Iran, Russia hasn't been as helpful as Iran would like it to be, but this is what Vladimir Putin just said today, referring to what happens if US gets involved in this war. Let's listen in.
It's disturbing. I am speaking without any irony, without any jokes. Of course, there's a lot of conflict potential. It's growing. And it's right under our noses. We are directly affected. The conflict that we are experiencing in Ukraine, in this direction. What is happening in the Middle East? And of course, we are very concerned about what is happening around Iran's nuclear facilities.
Now, of course, Putin is worried. He's not worried about World War III. He's not worried about Iranian regime falling. He's more worried about Russia and Russia not getting those valuable Iranian Shahed drones that Putin has been using to target Ukrainian civilians inside Ukraine. But it doesn't just stop there. In fact, at this conference, Putin was asked straight up, what do you think about Western reporting saying that Russia is not stepping up as a true ally when Iran needs it the most? In fact, just 2 days ago, we had Iranian foreign ministers say publicly that Iran's gonna remember which allies are standing next to Iran and which ones are not. This was in direct reference to Russia, who has not been so forthcoming with help. This is what Putin said.
About Russia being reliable or non-reliable as an ally. We've heard that we are supposed to show some solidarity, and this is very true. But each conflict is unique. Let me emphasize that Israel has more than 2 million people who came from the former Soviet Union or Russia. In fact, Israel is almost a Russian-speaking country today. And clearly, in our most recent history, we factor this in. Now, traditionally, we've had very good, friendly, and trust-based relations with the Arab world and Islamic world, because about 15% of the population of Russia are Muslims. So Russia is an observer in the Islamic Cooperation Organization. It's another important factor. We have to consider both factors. Now, we have established some friendly relations with Iran. And in this connection, we always fulfill all our obligations. And the same is happening in terms of relations between Russia and Iran.
Now let's talk about China. As you guys have seen in our previous videos, China has been sending suspicious cargo planes into Iran for the last 5 days. In fact, every single day a plane has taken off, went into Iran, and we don't know exactly what it is carrying. People have suspected weapons, people have suspected other things, but it's definitely worrisome. Now we have a member of the CCP who does a lot of rounds on interviews often, speaking for the CCP. I don't know what kind of official position he has with the party, but he speaks for the CCP often, especially with Western media. And this is what he just said about the war. If US gets involved, China will get involved. Let's listen in.
We are fighting back against aggressors, and if the United States wants to join Israel to become an aggressor against Iran, well, history will eventually have its own verdict. If other countries want to join the fight on the side of Israel, I will urge them to stop that right away. And if, for example, other countries want to join the fight against Iran, you never want to exclude the possibility that other major countries want to fight together with Iran, because the war imposed on Iran is the unjustified war. It's a war of aggression. It's undeclared war. It's a surprise attack. And any people, any country under such surprise attack, an attack of aggression, has full legal justification to fight back.
Now, it's not just the planes that China is sending into Iran. In fact, 2 Chinese electronic surveillance ships are also in the Persian Gulf. China is most certainly providing signals intelligence and targeting data to Iran. Now, that's definitely a possibility. We'll never have any solid evidence because it's just impossible to get. Now, to be fair to the Chinese, US also had a lot of military assets in the Middle East. In fact, we also have 2 aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf. We have one in the Mediterranean Sea. And of course, let's not forget all the bases we have in the Middle East. So it's not like it's just the Chinese who are sending military assets to the Middle East. It's a lot of countries. UK has some, US has some, and other countries, of course. Now, we have covered previously how China gets a lot of oil from Iran, but it actually has a lot more at stake than just oil. Of course, many wars have been started because of oil, but this time China has a lot more to lose than just free or I guess discounted oil that they're getting from Iran. Israel's war with Iran may have torched China's $400 billion foothold in the Middle East. Here's how Trump, Israel, and a crumbling regime just put a huge dent in CCP's global strategy. In 2021, China signed a $400 billion deal with Iran. 25 years of cheap oil, military, telecom, and financial access, and infrastructure projects tied to Belt and Road Initiative. Did a similar deal with Russia. If someone's evil, China is right there. Because of sanctions, over 90% of Iran's oil exports go to China. So Beijing exploited that, paid in yuan, not dollars, forced Iran to buy Chinese goods, took oil below market price, and bartered debt for control. Something called debt trap diplomacy. Even Iranian officials called it colonial trap. What happens if sanctions end or if Iranian regime falls? The oil for death racket ends. The BRI projects collapse. The $400 billion deal becomes toilet paper, and China loses its last major ally in the region. That's what happens, and Beijing knows it. Iran was CCP's regional anchor. Tehran armed Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, all backed by Chinese tech and weapons. Now Hamas, Hezbollah are shattered. The Houthis are bleeding, and Iran itself may not survive. Xi Jinping's Middle East house of cards is falling. China needs Iranian oil. Without it, Chinese refinery must start paying market prices for first time in years. That means higher energy costs, slower GDP growth, and domestic unrest in China. The economic pain is real and coming fast. One analyst put it the best: if Iran collapses, the $400 billion contract becomes a piece of waste. That's what happens when you bet on the world's top terror sponsor and lose. Maybe now they could help erase their trade surplus by buying US oil and LNG. Now, two things to point out here. We actually have undeniable evidence that came out last year that Chinese companies were helping Houthis target American ships in the Red Sea. When Houthis were going on their rampage of targeting ships in the Red Sea to shut down the region, well, it was the Chinese satellite companies who were providing them with coordinates and satellite data to help them target American ships. Clearly, China wanted to make sure the US loses its influence in the Middle East, and it was trying anything. It was partnering with Iran, it was partnering with Houthis and Hezbollah. Crazy. Unfortunately for CCP though, it seems their investment is about to go to zero. Reports just came out yesterday that Israel is likely targeting the Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei. On June 15, Iranian and international sources confirmed that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was moved to a heavily fortified underground bunker in Lavizan, northeast Tehran, after Israel launched a wave of targeted airstrikes. But here's what recent intel and forensic analysis now suggest. Khamenei is no longer in Lavizan. His June 18th video appearance lacked the usual setting with downgraded production quality, hinting at a makeshift or temporary location. Lavizan itself was struck by Israeli forces in recent days, compromising the secrecy and safety of the original bunker. Opposition sources and the IRGC insiders point to an emergency secondary location, likely towards deeper bunkers in mountains or Qom-Natanz corridor, where Iran maintains hardened military infrastructure. The regime itself, silence, lack of public appearances, and increased IRGC escort activity across central Iran further confirms this shift. When Supreme Leader disappears underground, it's not confidence, it's fear. This signals Tehran leadership is on the defensive, Israel's campaign is working, hitting closer to regime's core, and a new psychological phase of warfare has begun. Khamenei is no longer hiding, he's running. Now, President Trump has made it clear to the Israelis that no political assassination should happen in Iran. So far, Israel has only targeted IRGC commanders and nuclear scientists with their Operation Rising Lion and Operation Narnia. But none of the political leadership, either current or former, have been assassinated. We see a lot of news on Twitter and on other channels where it's basically not confirmed. Yes, Israel did target a compound where the Khamenei's bunker is, but there are other assets in that compound. IRGC command center was there, other military assets were stationed there. So it's very, very likely, considering how many ground assets Israel has in Iran, they knew Khamenei was not there and they were going after other commanders or military assets in that compound. Now, people ran with this story saying that Israel is trying to assassinate the Supreme Leader, but in reality, Israel would never do that because they cannot have the United States pissed off when they need the US help to take out Iranian nuclear facilities that are deep underground. Now, this news did make it all the way to Russia, and this is what the Russian spokesperson had to say, that if Khamenei is assassinated, that will open Pandora's box.
They will open the Pandora box. It should be unacceptable. Even talking about that should be unacceptable for everyone.
If it were to happen, though, that Israel assassinated Ayatollah Ali Khamenei with US assistance, how would Russia react?
Very negatively. Very negatively. We will strongly disapprove it.
Would it prompt any action?
Well, actually, it will lead to an action coming from inside Iran. Iran's society is very well organized and very well consolidated. And it will lead to birth of extremist moods inside Iran. And those who are speaking about that, they should keep it in mind. They will open the Pandora box. We did a lot of mistakes, and we did open lots of Pandora boxes through last decade. Why should we do another mistake? I think that the situation is extremely tense and it's dangerous, not only for the region but globally wise. And enlargement of the geography of the conflict, enlargement of the composition of participants of the conflict potentially is extremely, even more dangerous. This is our attitude, and it will lead only to, let's say, another circle of confrontation and escalation of tension in the region. Potentially, it's extremely dangerous.
And how concerned are you about the prospect of regime change in Iran?
Well, you know, yesterday this question was asked to President Putin when he talked to news media chiefs.
It's a valid question, surely.
Yes, and he said that I even don't want to speak about that, he said. So it's unimaginable. It's unimaginable, and it should be unacceptable. Even talking about that should be unacceptable for everyone.
Now, luckily, we do have some good news, and it seems that the Iranian foreign minister and a EU delegation, along with UK, France, and Germany, are currently negotiating a nuclear deal as I'm recording this video. Now, we'll get to the details of the negotiation in just a second, but before that, I had some interesting clip I wanted to show you guys. Of course, as expected, both countries, Iran and Israel, have continued to trade strikes with missiles and jets. Now, here I have an interesting footage from Tel Aviv, where we can see two Israeli interceptors hitting an Iranian ballistic missile. Let's watch the clip and then we'll talk about what this means. Now, as you guys saw, Israel used two interceptors to take down one missile. That means they just wanted to be really sure that they stopped this missile, likely because it was heading towards a populated area or maybe some valuable asset. It could be anything, a factory, oil plant, a refinery, something important that Israel didn't want the missile to hit. Now, this is where we talk about the Israeli air defense once again. This is something we've been covering for the last few days. But Israel is likely to run out of interceptors in the next coming weeks. Now, of course, Israel doesn't want to publicize this news or even talk about how many interceptors they have left. But this is a strategy Iran has been using all this time, where they're just trying to overwhelm the Israeli air defenses. And at the beginning of the operations, the Israeli air defenses held up pretty well. But now in the last 36-48 hours, the Iranian hit rate has been going up. At the beginning, it was 90% of the missiles were getting intercepted. In fact, the number was as high as 94%. And now in the last 48 hours, that number is coming down to 70-60% of missiles are intercepted. Rest are hitting their target. Considering all this, Israel would also want this war to wrap up pretty quickly, either through strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities or through negotiations. Luckily, President Trump has given Iran 2 weeks to agree on a nuclear deal, and Iran is currently negotiating already. But before we get to that, it seems the Israeli media is getting a little bit too antsy with the US involvement, because today we had some news from some Twitter accounts saying that the B-2s have landed in Israel. B-2s, as you guys may know, are the only bombers in the world that can take out the Iranian nuclear facilities that are more than 200-300 feet underground. B-2 carries roughly 30,000-pound bunker busters. It can carry 2 of them, and there's hope that when you drop 2 bunker busters on same spot, it can reach deep enough to destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities. As you can see from the tweet on your screen, the news came from Israeli news outlet. After doing some digging, it seems like it came from the Israeli channel 12 News. So after this report, many accounts started posting a random B-2 clip saying that a B-2 has landed in Israel, when in reality, if you just dig a little deeper, you know this is not actually true. Firstly, of course, this video is an old video for 2024, and it was taken in a naval base in Iceland. But secondly, B-2s don't actually need to reposition. In fact, B-2s have complete capability of carrying 60,000 pounds of bunker busters and travel across the world. So take off from Missouri, the White Man Air Base, go to Iran, strike whatever they need to strike, and come back without ever touching ground. Of course, they would need refueling all along the way, but they have the ability to do that, and they have done that multiple times in the past. So US actually doesn't really need to reposition the B-2s unless, of course, we use them as a pressuring tactic to bring Iran to the negotiating table like we did just a few months ago, or to put pressure on Iran to agree to the conditions that we are presenting in a nuclear deal. Now, this is where we transition into talking about the nuclear talks, the negotiations that are going on right now. In fact, just yesterday, the UK Foreign Minister David Lammy visited the United States, and this statement is what he said right after the meeting with Steve Witkoff and the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The situation in the Middle East remains precarious. We are determined that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. Meeting with Secretary of State Rubio and Steve Witkoff in the White House today, we discussed how a deal could avoid a deepening conflict. A window now exists within the next 2 weeks to achieve a diplomatic solution. Tomorrow, I'll be heading to Geneva to meet with the Iranian foreign minister alongside my French, German, and EU counterparts. Now is the time to put a stop to the grave scenes in the Middle East and prevent a regional escalation that would benefit no one. Clearly, this was a very positive statement, specifically that sentence, a window now exists within next 2 weeks to achieve a diplomatic solution. And luckily, it seems the negotiations are going well. Here's the clip of the foreign ministers meeting with the Iranian foreign minister.
So please, please have a seat. Right. Good afternoon. Please be seated. Welcome to everybody here in Geneva. I think it's a very good occasion. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, the negotiations have been going on for a few hours on Friday, and as I'm recording this, it seems the negotiation talks just ended a few minutes ago. Based on preliminary statements, it seems there's not going to be a joint statement between the Iranian delegation and the EU delegation. So that's definitely not good news. In fact, we also had the Iranian presidential spokesperson say this to CNN. Iran will not stop uranium enrichment for peaceful purposes, but concessions are possible. So hopefully this is a positive sign. Iran is willing to negotiate somehow, and the United States, the US, one condition we had that Iran cannot have uranium enrichment. So hopefully the solution will be somewhere in the middle. What that means, we don't exactly know. Maybe more countries could be involved in helping Iran enrich the uranium, or maybe more oversight over Iranian enrichment. Let's see what happens. We'll keep you guys updated, so be sure to hit the like and subscribe button down below to catch our future videos. YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators right now. That's why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one. Now, of course, that doesn't mean everyone should start a channel. But if you have ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now is the perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions every single day, and it's pushing newer and smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to start and grow a channel. I get these questions in my email all the time from some of you guys. That's why we have decided to put all our YouTube advice into one training bootcamp for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own YouTube channel, you can sign up for this bootcamp by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on your screen. This bootcamp is like a Zoom call, so it is limited to 100 people at a time. So be sure to sign up before it gets full. Now back to the video.